Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Mind Robber, the second story of the sixth season of classic Doctor Who, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. The Mind Robber is the 45th story overall, it's 5 episodes long, and it's written by Peter Ling. Fortunately, all 5 episodes exist. Hooray! So the plot of The Mind Robber is as follows. Escaping from a volcanic eruption on the planet Dolkis, the Doctor is forced to use the TARDIS's emergency unit, which takes this craft out of normal time and space, and out of reality itself. The time travelers arrive in a mysterious world peopled by fictional characters Gulliver and Rapunzel, the Tognan and Sir Lancelot, but also by creatures from mankind's worst imaginings. So that is it for the plot of The Mind Robber. In my opinion, The Mind Robber is a brilliant story. It's very imaginative. It actually takes Doctor Who outside the sci-fi genre once again, as the first time we saw Doctor Who outside sci-fi was in Enemy of the World, in which Doctor Who does spy drama James Bond style, and The Mind Robber does fantasy drama with little to no sci-fi whatsoever. The production of the story was very well done. The plot was awesome. The script was really good, and I liked the part when the TARDIS had landed inside that white void after the Doctor had taken the TARDIS out of space time itself, and when the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe ended up outside the TARDIS because they thought they were back in their home. But Jamie thought he was back in Scotland, Zoe thought she was back in her hometown, and then it was just a void of nothingness, and there were just these robots just hanging around all over the place, and the Doctor had to pretty much rush them back inside the TARDIS. And I liked Rapunzel's castle as well. That was very well done. I liked the whole pits that were all around all over the place, and Rapunzel's castle. That's where most of the conclusion of the story took place, and obviously where the master of the land was. And I mean, that was very good. And then to be said, I think Enemy of the Story, the Mind Robber probably has some of the best sets in 60s Doctor Who. And it was because I actually thought I was watching a 60s adaptation of popular story fairy tales, and the direction by David Maloney was brilliant. And this is actually the first Doctor Who story he directs. He's actually directed some of the greatest Doctor Who stories, such as The War Games, Genesis of the Daleks, Tidings of Ren Chiang, and The Deadly Assassin. And I love the visuals of this story. I would say it was very groundbreaking for 1960s standards, and I love the scene in episode 1, well, at the end of episode 1, where the TARDIS actually exploded while Jamie and Zoe were pretty much hanging onto the TARDIS console for dear life, while the Doctor was just spinning away in his chair while a sea of mist engulfs them. And I also like the Medusa that was used in episode 3. I mean, the special effects were really impressive, to say the least. I like how it was just no CGI was needed, and it was just how it was just pretty much just showing out of her head, and the snakes were anyways. And I loved it, and I loved how the writers actually took advantage of Fraser Hines' chickenpox, requiring him to take time off, and he was replaced Fraser Hines was replaced by a guy called Hamish Wilson, and Hamish Wilson did a good job replacing Fraser Hines as Jamie for at least 2 episodes, and how they did it, because he was the first to arrive in the land of fiction, and then he saw a red coat. Jamie saw a red coat, and he was actually shot. And then when the Doctor found him, he had to pretty much put Jamie back together. And then the Doctor messed it up and pretty much messed up Jamie's face, and that's how Hamish Wilson came to be, and that's how Fraser Hines also came back, because Jamie got shot again, and then the Doctor had to put Jamie back together again, and he actually did it correctly. I also liked how this story continued from the Dominators, especially when the Dominator's ship exploded, and then there was a volcanic eruption, and then the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe are pretty much trying to scramble, trying to escape from Dolkis, because the volcano, well, the lava had pretty much buried the TARDIS underneath. Even over, and that's how the ending of the Dominators actually led into episode 1 of this story, because episode 1 was just pretty much the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe trying to escape from Dolkis with the lava buried underneath them, and it was actually very entertaining, very tense, and it also had good moments as well, especially the TARDIS exploding, and then the whole Jamie seeing Scotland and Zoe seeing her hometown, and plus it actually showed the strength that the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe had as a trio. And obviously, this story has some very good cliffhangers. For instance, episode 1 had the TARDIS exploding. Episode 2 had the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe being confronted by a unicorn. Weird ending, but it makes sense. Episode 3 had the Doctor and Zoe face to face with Medusa, and they were struggling not to close their eyes or look away at some point. Episode 4 had Jamie and Zoe crushed by a book. Weird as it sounds, yes, they were actually had the book closed on them, which was bizarre to be honest, but it was still good. But they were all great cliffhangers, and the acting was just marvelous. I really liked Charlton's performance in the story, and it was really good. And Patrick Charlton actually said himself that this was his favorite story, and Wendy Padbury actually said that The Mind Robber was her favorite story as well. And you can really tell that Charlton really enjoyed making The Mind Robber because he was just really having a good time and he was just giving it his all. And I really liked the part when he was having a battle of wit with the Master of the Land. Not to be, I was going to say the Master, but we shouldn't confuse this Master with the other Master we know who'll be coming up in 2 seasons' time. And they were summoning all these characters just to like at least fight. It was a good scene. Jamie and Zoe were awesome in the story. Jamie obviously had his recasting, and as I mentioned before, it really worked to fit the purpose of this story. And after Fraser returned, he continued as if nothing happened, and he looked really good. And he was definitely very good. I liked the beginning bit when he was trying to get the Doctor and Zoe to stop gazing at the volcano and trying to get the Doctor to make a hasty escape in the TARDIS. And it was actually funny because Jamie, despite being from the Highland, no, not the Highland era, from the 1700s, he was pretty much the normal, same person in this scenario where the Doctor and Zoe were just advanced beings and they're just fascinated by a volcano, and it was actually quite funny as well. Zoe was great as well. She had some good scenes, and one of my favorite scenes from Zoe overall actually comes from the Mind Robber, and this is when she literally fought the Carcass. This was when the Carcass was basically a superhero, a comic book superhero from Zoe's time. Yeah, and Zoe pretty much fought him and won because the Doctor, he was unsure that the Carcass was real. He was unsure about the Carcass's real, if it was real, because he hadn't actually heard of the Carcass, and Zoe obviously had, and then she pretty much took him on and actually beat the guy into submission. That was pretty badass. And let's say let's just say Zoe's catsuit in this story was very iconic for certain reasons. Obviously, Zoe's catsuit is actually one of my favorite companion outfits because it's very Zoe to say the least. And the side characters are really good as well. But there were mainly all fictional characters, to be honest, but they were alright. We had Rapunzel, the castle was the main place where most of the final episode took place. She was good, she was funny as well. We had the stranger who was actually Gulliver from Gulliver's Travels. He was an odd character, but he was really good. He's played by Bernard Horsfall, and he does return to Doctor Who in a couple of times. He does return later on in this season as one of the Time Lords that was looking over the Doctor's trial in the War Games. He does return. I think he was a counselor and the Three Doctors or something like that. No, not the Three Doctors. He wasn't that. That's another story. So he's one of the 1,000 Planet of the Daleks, and he's actually Chancellor Goth. Yes, that's the one I was talking about. Chancellor Goth. He was in The Deadly Assassin. And I think the expanded media actually confirms that Goth was the Time Lord that Horsfall portrayed in War Games, and Chancellor Goth and the Deadly Assassin are the same Time Lord. And we obviously had the Carcass. He was the superhero from Zoe's time, and he was pretty much there to receive a kind of whoop-ass from Zoe, and he is mentioned in the whole Battle of the West between the Doctor and the Master of the Land. And that's pretty much it. And other than a few kids running around, and other fictional characters during the whole battle of the Doctor and the Master, such as Blackbeard the Pirate, Cyrano, the Tarjanan from the Three Musketeers, and even Sir Lancelot. They're all really good characters, to say the least. Whew. Now on to the villains of the Mind Robber. We had the Master of the Land, as I mentioned before, not to be confused with the Master we all know. He shows up in season 8. He was a good big bad, and and the reason why he actually possessed a writer from the 1920s who was actually on his way somewhere, but then he ended up in the land of fiction, and the Doctor was able to free him, and then they're all able to go back to their own respective times. The writer was able to go back to his own time, and the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe ended up back in the TARDIS. Yes, and obviously like how powerful the Master of the Land was, and how he was able to use the writer guy to speak through, using to speak the writer guy to speak through him, and I like how he was able to manipulate the story as well. And I obviously liked how the Doctor, when he got there, because the Master of the Land actually wanted to use the Doctor to overlook the whole land of fiction, and then the Doctor obviously used that, and that's how the whole battle of the characters came to be. And it was really quite good. I mean, and we also had those robots. We had a few robots. I mean, I think there were those robots with the chest piece in the middle, the spiky chest bits in the middle. They were unique to say the least. I actually liked them, and then we obviously had those toy soldiers. I'm not sure if they're actually robots, and the way that they were marching all over the place and the sound effects was creepy at the same time, but it was quite cool as well. The only fault I have with the Mind Robber is how short the episode lengths are. I mean, yes, it's good you don't have to go through 24-25 minutes of a story, which, yeah, it depends on what story you're watching. It can be, oh, just let it end already, or just like, or it could be either really good, it's just when it gets to the end, you'll be like, that can't be it. Yeah. But for the Mind Robber, I've enjoyed it even more because every episode of the Mind Robber is pretty much at least 21 episodes, 21 minutes long, and then obviously episode 5 was literally 18 minutes, and I did feel the ending was a bit rushed. And what other thoughts? Maybe if they had like a few more characters there to help the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe out, that would have been a lot more. That would be interesting. But I think because of budgetary issues, I think that's why the story had to suffer a little bit, because I think they did go a bit over budget in the Dominators, and that resulted in episode 1 of the Mind Robber being created. And with the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe just mainly in the TARDIS for the pretty much the whole time. So to conclude this review, The Mind Robber is a fantastic story, imaginative, and definitely one of Charlton's very best. I can definitely understand why he loved this story so much, and I think before he died in 1987, I think he was in the convention in America. I think he actually requested The Mind Robber to be shown to the people in attendance. So I gave The Mind Robber a 9 out of 10. So my next review will be The Invasion, a story that sees the return of the Cybermen, the first instance of a new concept that will become the new normal in future Doctor Who seasons, and the importance of important organization, the debut of an important organization in Doctor Who, and obviously the return of the Brigadier, who is now the Brigadier, and of course the debut of Sergeant Benton. So thanks for watching the Mind Robber review. Let me know what you thought of this story and this review, and let me know in the comments below, and like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you later.